Okay, so it is Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. I'm going to call the Executive Committee to order at 10:05 a.m. And before we get started with the meeting, I would just like to acknowledge that the SFSS and the lands in which we are zooming in from today is located on the traditional and unceded coast territories of the Coast Salish peoples, which includes the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, and Katzie nations. And that unceded means that these lands have never been handed over, sold, or given up by these nations, and that we're currently situated on occupied territories. I also want to recognize that there are a large chunk of us today who are calling in from these lands, but we do have a number of folks who are still calling in from home, and it's critical that as we engage in these meetings and engage in our work and our everyday lives, that we're acknowledging the lands in which we are all uniquely situated on at this moment, and really respecting the stewards of the land in due course, and recognizing the power that we all have in standing in solidarity with Indigenous peoples. And so before we get started, I would just like to acknowledge this new meeting format and kind of go through how this is going to work. So what we're doing today is a bit of a pilot project in trying to figure out how we can run hybrid meetings. So today we are testing it for the executive committee in hopes that soon enough we can start opening it up for other committees, maybe down the line, but for now we're giving it a bit of a test. So here's a bit of an overview of just the safety measures that we have in place today. So everyone in this room has been asked to wear a mask for the duration of the meeting. We're separated by 2 meters apart. We also have you can't really see them very well on the screen, but we do have clear plexiglass screens separating us on the tables. And we have a max occupancy of 8 people for this room. We only have 5 people here right now. However, you can have up to 8 people in this room. If for some reason you do have to take off your mask, I just ask that you please step out of the room if that is something that you need to do. Please try to avoid eating if you can, because that does require taking off your mask. If you do need to take like a sip of water, I think that is fine. We're 2 meters apart. We have plexiglass screens. If you need to take it off for like 5 seconds, I think that's fine. But try to avoid for long periods of time. In terms of voting, because we do have some execs attending in person, virtually. So if you are attending virtually, not much will change in terms of how you vote and things like putting yourself on the speakers list. So, if backing up a bit. Attending in person, for folks here in person, will be the main change. So here's what you need to be aware of. If you are attending in person and you wish to speak, here's how this is going to work. We're so used to doing list and direct response in Zoom. So here is, I think, something that can work. If you would like to, basically the equivalent of list, making a new point, raise your hand out like this so it's visible to me with 1 finger out like this. That will signal to me that you want to make a new point, the equivalent of putting yourself on the speaker's list. If you would like to make a direct response to something that someone said, put out your hand like this with 2 fingers out. That will signal to me that it is a direct response. It's kind of, if you think of it as the double star that we usually do in the chat, 2 fingers, 2 stars. And in terms of the speakers list, Jess, who's the vice committee chair, will be helping me keep track of the speakers list. If you are attending virtually, it will still be the same process. Put yourself on the speakers list by typing list in the chat, or a direct response by putting the double stars in the chat. And we will be still going in order. So, in sequential order by folks raising their hand and putting themselves on the speakers list in the chat. For voting, I will continue to ask for unanimous approval on most motions. This means that when we vote on a motion, I will continue to say things like seeking unanimous consent. And you will only raise your hand if you would like to register an abstention or an against vote. So same thing, when we are voting on a motion, I would say something like, all those in favor seeking unanimous consent. And you will only raise your hand if you would like to dissent or abstain. And again, as per usual, if that does happen and you raise your hand, I will call on you to clarify whether or not you're abstaining or voting against. And likewise, just as normal, if you're attending virtually, if you would like to register an abstention or a vote against, use the Zoom raise hand feature and I'll call on you to clarify what your vote is. Lastly, for those attending virtually, I would recommend that you change your Zoom settings so that you are on speakers view and not gallery view, because it will be easier to see the faces of folks attending in person. If you're on gallery view, it's really kind of small and we're kind of just like small little midgets on your screen. So I would recommend switching to speakers view if that's something you are comfortable with. And for folks attending in person, I would just say, try and speak as loudly and audibly as you can. The microphones in here are pretty good. We've tested them out multiple times, but if you are speaking quietly, it is a bit hard to pick up. And those attending virtually, if you are having trouble hearing, just let us know, either by typing in the chat, or you can just jump in, unmute yourself and say, we're having a bit of trouble hearing you. Are there any questions about this, how this is going to work?
Let's try it.
Okay, cool. As the chair, this might be a bit weird for me trying to get used to it, so please bear with me as I try and chair my first in-person meeting ever. We'll begin. Let's start with our roll call of attendance. I'll call on your position, and when I do so, if you could please share your first and last name, your pronouns, your name, your pronouns, and any access needs that you might have. Again, access needs being anything that we can do to accommodate you in this meeting, whether you're attending virtually or in person, as well as anything you would just like folks to know about your participation in this meeting today. So let's begin with members of the committee, and I'll start with myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Gabe Leosis. My pronouns are he, him, his, and my access needs are met. And we'll move next to our committee vice chair and VP Events and Student Affairs.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jess. My pronouns are she, her, hers. For my access needs, I might be a little bit slow on trying to get the speakers list and stuff like that, getting used to this new format. But that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. VP External and Community Affairs.
Okay, Matt. My pronouns are he, him, his. My accessibility needs. I'm kind of getting used to sitting here, and I feel like I'm gonna get really fidgety, like just kind of trying not to move around so much and stuff like that. But bear with me if I'm kind of distracting in that way.
No worries, Matt. Thank you. Our VP Equity and Sustainability has submitted her regrets for today, so we'll be adding those to the agenda later on. We'll move on to VP Finance and Services.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Almis. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and all my access needs are met. It's really warm in here, so I have like 2 fans on. If you cannot hear me, just let me know. I can say again.
No worries, Almis. Thank you. We can hear you pretty clearly. Thanks. VP Internal and Organizational Development.
Hi, everyone. My name is Corbett. Pronouns are he, him, his. Access needs. I'm here, but just on my phone, so it might be a little slow getting technical stuff switched out. Cool. So have patience with me.
No worries, Corbett. Thank you. VP University and Academic Affairs.
Hello, everyone. My name is Serena. My pronouns are she, they. And for access needs, I'm just getting used to like hearing people without headphones. So I might just ask you to repeat something if I didn't hear you correctly, but I'm looking at the captions as well, so I think it'll be okay.
Fantastic. Thanks, Serena. And we'll move on to society staff now, starting with operations organizer.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name's Aisha. My pronouns are he, her, and hers, and my access needs are met.
Thanks, Aisha. Board organizer.
Hi, this is Emanuela. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and all my access needs are met as well.
Thank you. Administrative assistant?
Hi, my name's Christina. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and all my access needs are met.
Thank you. We also have Athena.
Hey folks, my name is Athena Girton. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. My access needs are definitely met, but just a heads up, my Wi-Fi is not great. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Melanie?
Hi everyone, I'm Melanie. Pronouns are she, her, hers, and my access needs are met. Thanks.
Thank you. Nancy?
Hi everyone, my name is Nancy. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and all my access needs are met.
Thanks, Nancy. Dipti?
Hi everyone, I'm Dipti. Pronouns she, her, hers. All my access needs are met.
Thank you, Dipti. For society staff, have I missed anyone? Okay, cool. I also see our Associate Vice President, Events and Student Affairs is here.
Hi everyone, my name is Akam. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and all my access needs are met. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, is there anyone, excuse me, that I've missed on the roll call of attendance? Okay, well, thank you everyone. We'll move into section 4 of our agenda, which is the consent agenda. And we have 3 motions under the consent agenda today. We have the adoption of the agenda, sorry, 2 rather, the adoption of the agenda and matters arising from the minutes. Are there any objections to any of the motions under the consent agenda? Corbett?
Yeah, I object to the amending the agenda. I have at least one item that I'd like to put on the motion.
Cool. So seeing as there is an objection to motion 4.1.1, we will move that out of the consent agenda and we will consider it on its own immediately after the consent agenda and before new business. So that leaves us with just the matters arising from the minutes, 4.1.2. Is there any other objections? All right. Well, seeing no more objections, the consent agenda is carried as amended by unanimous consent. And now we will move into the adoption of the agenda. And the motion reads, be it resolved to adopt the agenda as presented. Is there a mover for the motion? Corbett moves. Is there a seconder? Matt seconds. Any discussion?
List.
Go ahead, Corbett.
Yes, thank you. I would like to amend the agenda to add a motion called Associate VP Counselor's Powers.
Okay.
And I'll send it in chat the motion so it's in writing.
Perfect. Thank you, Corbett.
Oh, wait, sorry, no, sorry. It's already on the agenda. My apologies. I did fully wake up.
Okay.
Sorry, I would withdraw that, and I would like to add a motion to extending delegated authority to the VP Internal and Organizational Development.
Okay, perfect. So we'll add that under new business, and you also have that motion in the chat.
That's in the chat. Yeah, the other one's actually already on the agenda because it was submitted early.
Perfect. Thank you, Corbett. I have a couple of motions to add as well. I'd like to add 2 motions, the first of which is titled Appointing Employer Representatives to the Out on Campus Hiring Committee. And the motion reads, and I sent this via email, so it's so weird. I can't paste it in the chat. So used to doing that. Anyway, the motion does read, be it resolved to appoint Gabe Leosis and Marie Haddad to the Out on Campus Coordinator Hiring Committee as employer representatives. That will be the first motion that I'm adding. The second will be titled Appointing Employer Representatives to the Building Coordinator Hiring Committee. And that will be titled sorry, the motion reads, be it resolved to appoint Corbett Gildersleeve and John Walsh to the building coordinator hiring committee as employer representatives. Are there any other amendments to be made to the agenda? Serena?
I'd like to amend the agenda to include a motion titled SFU Climate Emergency Declaration Open Letter. I'll put that in the chat as well. It's just a long motion, so it'll take me like a couple minutes.
No worries. Thanks, Serena. Any other amendments to be made at this time? Matt?
I'm just wondering if we have to, someone can move to amend to include regrets, or Marie, a section to include regrets. So we can move.
Okay, cool.
Regrets from Marie Haddad for today's meeting.
Thank you very much. I actually almost forgot about that. Thank you. So we'll add that as part of the batch of amendments. Who moved and seconded the adoption of the agenda again? Corbett moved and seconded.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we'll add that, a section for regrets for Marie Haddad, and that will come immediately after this motion. So between adoption of the agenda and new business. Any other amendments at this time? Okay, seeing none, we will we need a mover for that batch of amendments. And Matt, you already said you would move that, right? Cool. So Matt moves. Is there a seconder?
Jeff.
Oh.
Sorry, Jess seconds. Thank you, Jess. Any discussion on the batch of amendments that we've just put forward? Okay, seeing none, we'll put that question to a vote. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. And again, please raise your hand either physically or by the Zoom raise hand feature if you would like to dissent or abstain. Almas? Almas, how are you voting?
I've raised my hand.
Are you wanting to register a vote against or? So,
Sorry, I can't hear you.
So how this works is if you would like to vote against or abstain, that is when you would raise your hand and I would just call on you and ask you if you were voting against or abstaining. So are you voting in favor of the motion?
I'm voting in favor.
Oh, okay, cool. So you can stay, basically, if we are assuming that you are voting in favor unless you would like to express otherwise, and you would do that by using the raise hand feature. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds good.
Very cool. Thank you, Almas. Okay, so in that case, seeing no objections to the amendment, that is carried unanimously. And we will move back to the main motion, which now reads, be it resolved to adopt the agenda as amended. Any last amendments or discussion to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, seeing that the speakers list is exhausted, we'll put the motion to a vote. Be it resolved to adopt the agenda as amended. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. Okay, without objection, the motion is carried unanimously. And we'll move to the next motion, which is adoption or ratification of regrets. So be it resolved to ratify regrets from Marie Haddad. Is there a mover for the motion? Matt moves. Is there a seconder? Corbett seconds. Any discussion on the regrets? Marie just let me know this morning that she wasn't feeling great this morning. She was feeling a bit ill, so she had to submit her regrets. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll put the question to a vote. Be it resolved to ratify regrets from Marie Haddad. Yeah, we'll vote on that. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. Okay, in this case, the motion, without objection, the motion is carried unanimously. Thanks, everyone. And we will move into new business then. This is currently section 5 on the agenda, if you're looking at the agenda that was circulated. And we'll move into motion 5.1, which is appointing an associate to the president. This was submitted by myself, and I'll read the motion now. Whereas as per Council Policies Rule 17, Associate Vice Presidents may appoint Associate Vice Presidents to assist in the duties of their respective executive office by nominating a member in good standing of the Society for the position. Whereas as per Council Policies Rule 17, Associate Vice Presidents, nominations for the position of Associate Vice President shall be ratified subject to approval by the Executive Committee by a majority vote. Whereas Rule 17 Associate Vice President says that Associate Vice Presidents under the office of the President shall be referred to as an associate to the President. And whereas President Gabe Leosis has nominated Kirtana Menon to serve as associate to the President, be it resolved that the Executive Committee ratify the nomination of Kirtana Menon as associate to the President. I will move this motion. Gabe moves. Is there a seconder? Jess seconds. Thank you. Okay, so yes, as the motion has said, I have nominated Kirtana to be to work with me as associate to the President. She wanted to be here today, but unfortunately she had a co-op meeting that conflicted with the exec meeting. But I am really looking forward, subject to approval by the exec, to working with Kirtana. Her and I worked together on the Residence Hall Association Board of Directors in 2019 and a month or so into 2020 before the pandemic hit and I had to move off of residence and therefore I was no longer a member of RHA. But Kirtana is really amazing. I'm actually really excited to work with her. Right now she's an alternate counselor for on council, and I think she's one of the most outspoken and active voices on council. And she's a really hard worker, and I think she's going to be really great for this role. So, yeah, if this motion is to go through, I think I'm thrilled to be working with her and to have that support and that yeah. Any questions or comments on the motion? Okay, cool. So seeing no more discussion, that the speakers list is exhausted, we'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent on the motion. And if you would like to dissent or abstain, please raise your hand either physically or using the Zoom raise hand feature. And seeing none, that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. And we'll move to 5.2, which is guidelines for hybrid meetings during COVID-19. This was also submitted by me, and there was an attachment to go with this motion titled COVID-19 Guidelines plus Robert's Rules Tips, Hybrid Video Conferencing. So the question reads, whereas SFSS has entered phase 2 of our COVID-19 safety plan, whereas provincial health orders now allow for small in-person meetings to occur in workplaces, whereas the Student Union building has 2 meeting rooms with video conferencing equipment that allow us to hold hybrid virtual in-person meetings. Be it resolved that the Executive Committee establish guidelines for hybrid meetings during COVID-19 as attached in the document titled COVID-19 Guidelines plus Robert's Rules Tips, Hybrid Video Conferencing. Would anybody like to move the motion? Corbett moves the motion. Is there a seconder? Matt seconds. So Corbett moved, Matt second. Thanks, everyone. So I'll explain the motion. So I crafted these guidelines. I crafted these months ago, and they've kind of just been sitting in my Google Drive waiting to be used for this moment. So as workplaces continue to open up, we're kind of starting to think about how we can safely do some meetings, some gatherings in the Student Union building. Right now, public health orders are allowing us to have small in-person meetings with certain safety precautions in place. Obviously, as we are seeing right now, we have masks on, we're social distancing, we have plexiglass, we have an occupancy limit. And so I crafted these guidelines to give us a bit of a framework for how to hold in-person meetings using these meeting rooms that have hybrid video conferencing capabilities during this period of time where we're in a bit of a transition period where things are starting to open up. You know, in the very near future, we might be back to normal, but in the meantime, we're kind of in that gray zone where we need to, you know, have some clear guidelines in place for how to do meetings like this in a manner that is safe for both our elected students and staff. So some of the key features of these guidelines include COVID-19 safety measures that must be taken while using either of the hybrid video conferencing rooms. So that includes, as I said, the requirement to wear masks while in a meeting, the requirement to maintain a 2-meter social distance from each other. We have plexiglass screens separating us just for that added protection. Additionally, it goes into how these rooms will be booked, who may book these rooms in the interim, and also tips on how to use Robert's rules when you're in a hybrid setting. And lastly, I will just mention that there is a clause in there that says these guidelines should be reviewed by August 23rd, because August 23rd is the tentative date we have set for the Student Union building to open. And around, I believe, September 3rd is when we will enter stage 4 of the BC Restart Plan, which is essentially a full-scale return to normal. And so these guidelines will need a major overhaul around that time. So at this time, I just want to ask if there are any questions or comments about the guidelines as presented right now. Corbett?
Not so much about the guidelines, but rather the provincial health orders. Is there a definition of what small meeting size is, or that's left to us to decide?
I don't know what small is defined as. I honestly, the last time I checked the PHO, I did not see a number.
Okay.
But you know, I assume that it wouldn't be, you know, something like 20 people in one room. I think the occupancy limit we have now of around 8 in one room is probably falls within the definition of small.
Okay, thank you.
Amos, do you have a question?
Yeah, I also wanted to know if we have a screening procedure set in place. Like for entering sub, we do have a spreadsheet that we all use. But for people who are not a part of the executive team but will still want to attend meetings in person, are we planning to set up some screening forms for them as well?
So anyone who plans to come to the sub in person, whether or not, well, let me preface this by saying these guidelines are specifically for members of the executive committee, for members of council, and for staff. And there are no external bookings at this time. So until the building is actually open, no one from outside of the elected students or staff will actually be using these meeting rooms. So with that said, anyone who does plan to come and attend an in-person meeting would need to fill out that sub-access sheet and would be required to fill out a self-assessment online form to survey whether or not they have symptoms of COVID-19. And if they do, then they would be asked to stay home rather than attending in person. Which is the great thing about having hybrid, because if they can't attend in person, then they can just log on from Zoom at home. Does that answer your question, Elmas? Cool. Any other questions or comments? Jess.
I was wondering for folks at home how you're finding this hybrid style, and if there are at any point something that you need to change, if just let us know. There's more of a comment.
Yeah. It's going to be a bit bumpy for the first little while, and feedback is always great in trying to figure out how to do this in the most efficient and effective way. Almas, you may go ahead.
Yeah, I think this one's actually a really great way, because till the time we're not fully opened up, there's some people who might have concerns around coming in, but they still want to be a part of the meeting. So I think this works great for them.
Yes, I agree. And I actually think that beyond COVID, this will just increase the accessibility of our meetings. Because, you know, coming all the way up to Burnaby Mountain for an in-person meeting is actually a huge barrier. And I know in years past, for things like council even, that has been one of the biggest barriers for people actually being members of a committee or council or the board. It's just not accessible for some people to be able to transport themselves all the way up here. So, and you also think about some students who primarily attend classes at Vancouver or Surrey, and it would just be completely out of their way to come all the way to Burnaby campus for an in-person meeting. So I think beyond the context of COVID, this provides a really accessible way to attend our meetings. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of had a question. So with the conferencing, like equipment and whatnot, I know there's three rooms, right?
Yep.
And for everything that you have here to set up to chair a meeting, I think it might be good to go through even like a list of things, like for the hybrid, I guess like something like, you know, for hybrid video conferencing, like just saying like you will need a computer or something and certain cords and whatnot, and then just like have a list of things that people will need to chair a meeting, and also for staff. I think that would be helpful. And then also some type of, I don't know, a very brief like training, like with John, to how to go through before you actually go chair a meeting for like the staff, like the main staff, and then also probably for like, what is it even, you know, the staff want to have like work meetings and stuff like that, to utilize it, like to whoever's going to be using the equipment, give them a list of things that they'll need to set up a meeting, and then before they even do that, like have a training for everyone who will be chairing meetings and things like that.
Yeah. That's a really good idea, Matt. Something I was thinking about too this morning even, around like having like instructions basically that people can, if they have no idea how to use this room, that they can just pick up that sheet of paper and be able to set up the room.
You can literally tape it to the doors.
You could, yeah. You could just have print it out, laminate it, and have it out and visibly for people to use. Yes, Matt?
Like I think going through like how this meeting runs today, I think just going through and kind of writing out like this is what I did, because I noticed that like you have 2 computers and like things like that to actually properly engage with everybody here, and then like what you have in front of you, how you set that up, because like even if I were to do that, like I don't know if I'd be able to figure it out like right away. I'm just saying like this is what I got and then this is how I'm setting it up. Then yeah, I just make clear instructions like that, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Matt. I think that is, I agree with you. Jess, what do you mean?
That's because there's like no plus to agree on something.
Oh.
So how do you do that in person?
I don't know, thumbs up, applause, shake your head. You can slam the table. Like a poetry reading.
Yeah. or I think the Women's Center Collective said they do like
jazz hands.
Twinkles, I think it's called.
Oh yeah.
Twinkles, yeah.
I used to do this at a summer camp. We call it twinkles, yeah.
Yeah, twinkles,
yeah. Some people, I don't know why people don't like the twinkles. I think it's weird. I like it.
Plus.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments on the guidelines?
Oh.
Corbett, go ahead.
Maybe I missed this when I was reading through cleaning of the rooms.
Yes. That's a good question. There is nothing about cleaning in the guidelines, but there would be, I believe.
Part of like building management.
Yeah, as part of either our overall COVID safety plan or some other policy or guidelines.
Okay. And we can check with John then.
Yeah. Yeah. Other questions? Okay, cool. I will say, you know, I think we'll continue to test this at the executive committee. And, you know, after having a couple of meetings, we can then look at opening it up to other committees as well. The guidelines do specify that this room can be booked and used by staff as well. So as we are in a gradual return to work plan, staff have the option to come into the building and use it at their own comfort level. And if staff do wish to have a internal meeting with other staff who are also present in the building, but may also be attending virtually, staff may also book this room as well. And I know that at a staff meeting, I was actually, who was it? Lacey asked me that question around if this will be accessible for staff to use, and I said to them, that's the goal. So these guidelines can be distributed to staff as well who happen to be in the building and would like to use the rooms. Corbett.
Just an additional comment on that. The camera system in the staff meeting room is a little bit different. It actually can zoom in on people talking. So you might want to be able to use that room, especially for even smaller groups.
Yeah.
Instead of having like 4 people up front, need to be 4 people in there. And it definitely supports staff who are remote too, or say working in Surrey. They don't have to physically come up here. So that was kind of the goal, especially of setting these up. Regardless, even in after the fact, like 2-3 years down the road, we still want to be able to have our systems accessible for remote access and remote meeting attendance and stuff for staff and stuff, so we don't have to force them to come and travel all the time.
Exactly, you're totally right. Something I also do want to mention, I guess I should mention this at the top too, is that these guidelines are specifically, so there are 3 meeting rooms that have hybrid conferencing equipment. There's this one, there's the one across the hall, that is basically identical to this room. And then there's the conference room and the staff room on another floor that also has video conferencing equipment. These guidelines are specifically for this room and the other room across the hall. Okay. And the reason that is because the one in the staff room is quite small, and it would be a lot harder to social distance and practice COVID-19 safety measures in there. So at least I think for the meantime, while we're still practicing social distancing, we're required to wear masks, that we should encourage staff and anyone else to use this meeting room and the one across the hall, because there is a greater ability to social distance, to practice safe COVID-19 measures until a time by which we can, God willing, forfeit social distancing and all of these measures that we've been practicing for the last almost 16 months. But yeah. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Okay, so seeing that the speakers list is exhausted, we'll move to a vote on the motion. So the motion reads, the question reads, be it resolved that the Executive Committee establish guidelines for hybrid meetings during COVID-19 as attached in the document titled COVID-19 Guidelines plus Robert's Rules Tips, Hybrid Video Conferencing. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. If you would like to dissent or abstain, vote against or abstain, please raise your hand either physically or using the Zoom raise hand feature. Seeing no objections at this time, the motion is carried unanimously. Thanks, everyone. Next motion, 5.3, non-exec counselor Associate Vice President hours. This was submitted by our VP Internal and Organizational Development, Corbett Gildersleeve. And the question reads, whereas Rule 2, Section 5 states that non-executive council members contribute an average of 10 hours semi-monthly, whereas Rule 17, Section 5 states that associate vice presidents must contribute at least 15 hours a week, whereas SFSS council policies does not clearly lay out the hour contributions when a non-executive councillor also serves as an associate vice president, be it resolved that the executive committee approve that a non-executive council, that the hours a non-executive councillor's hours can count towards the associate vice president's hours. Be it further resolved that the executive committee task the governance committee to develop a policy to account for this scenario. Is there a mover? Corbett moves. Is there a seconder? Matt seconds. Corbett is the mover of this motion. You have the floor.
Yeah, I want to fix that typo in the fourth clause, but we can do that after discussion, I think.
Sure.
Overall.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, as the motion states, there's a bit of a policy gap between with the scenario where a non-exec counselor serves also as associate vice president. How is their hours work? Do they have to work 10 hours simultaneously on top of 15 hours as associate vice president? Are the work separate? Are they not? And so because there's some unclarity, we can pass a motion to have at least temporarily how we think a solution should work, and then revisit at the governance committee and develop a scenario to go back to council for a vote. So the current situation is basically combine the two, and that the non-exec council hours can go towards AVP work.
Thank you, Corbett. Are there any questions on the motion? Jess.
I think this would be really beneficial, especially for my current Associate Vice President Events and Student Affairs, Akam Sidhu, just because she is sitting on council as the Society of Arts and Social Sciences Counselor and serving as AVP. So we found that there was a gap in this as well at Corbett, just because the work is really hard to differentiate whether or not she's doing it as AVP or counselor. I bring Akam in, and she willingly and like lovingly goes to any meetings that I send calendar invites to, and we can't really like separate it. Even for these work hours, like even if we do our work reports, it would be a combination of the two. So it's just more easier, I think. So thanks for doing that for it.
Thank you, Jess. Any other questions or comments? Cool. Does everyone within an AVP, does this make sense to you folks? Cool. Makes sense to me. Thank you, Corbett, for bringing this motion forward. I think it's going to help greatly in kind of differentiating that work in a scenario where an AVP also serves as a counselor. All right. We'll put the question to a vote at this time.
I'd like to amend the agenda to fix
the motion.
The amendment I would like to make is in the fourth clause, the first be it resolved clause, to change it to say, be it resolved that the executive committee approved that the hours non-executive counselor works can count towards associate vice president's hours.
Cool. So basically you're striking.
Count towards the associate vice president's hours, just a few small grammar changes. So basically swap out the second hours for work.
Yeah.
And add count towards the associate vice president's hours.
Perfect. So Corbett has moved to amend the motion to make those changes. Is there a seconder? Just seconds. Any discussion on the amendment to the main motion? It's just typos. Okay, seeing none, I will put the amendment to a vote. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. All right, the amendment to the main motion is carried unanimously, and now we'll move back to the main motion. Any last questions or comments on the main motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll put the main motion to a vote. I'll just read it one more time. Be it resolved that the executive committee approved that the hours a non-executive counselor works can count toward the associate vice president's hours. Be it further resolved that the executive committee tasked the governance committee to develop a policy to account for this scenario. We'll put the question to a vote. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. If you'd like to dissent or abstain, please physically raise your hand or use the Zoom raise hand feature. Okay, the motion is carried unanimously. Thanks, everyone. Okay, maybe we can probably do one or two more motions and then we can take a 5-minute break. So now we're moving into the motions that were amended to the agenda at the beginning. And I believe the first one is the delegation of authority to the VP Internal and Organizational Development. So I'll read the motion now. Whereas the Executive Committee on May 25th, 2021 temporarily delegated authority to the VP Internal and Organizational Development to approve check requisitions and sign documents on the VP Finance and Services behalf to assist while they were not available. Whereas the Executive Committee on June 8th, 2021 extended that delegated authority until June 21st, 2021, while the VP Finance and Services was on an approved leave of absence. Whereas the VP Finance and Services has finished their leave of absence and is engaging in a gradual return to work plan, be it resolved that the Executive Committee extend the delegated authority to the VP Internal and Organizational Development until June 30th to assist the VP Finance and Services transition back to work. Is there a mover? Corbett moves. Is there a seconder? Just seconds. Thank you. And Corbett, you're the mover of the motion, so you may speak.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, it's just to assist Almas while she's coming back to work. Just to still help with any signing stuff that comes in, like checks or check recs or anything. So while Almas goes through backlog of emails and reports and things like that. So I'm basically just helping out until the end of the month, and then should be fine after that.
Perfect. Thank you, Corbett. Any questions or comments from members of the Executive Committee? Jess, please go ahead.
I'm just really excited to have Almas back on board, and we're here to help you transition easily, and Corbett's been doing a really great job. Team effort, so we're excited for you to come back.
Ditto that.
Yeah.
So much, Jess. Really sweet of you.
Slamming the table in agreement. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks Corbett for bringing this forward. And we'll put the question to a vote. I'll read the motion one more time. Be it resolved that the Executive Committee extend the delegated authority to the VP Internal and Organizational Development until June 30th to assist in the VP Finance and Services transition back to work. All those in favor, seeking unanimous consent on the motion. If you would like to dissent or abstain, vote against or abstain rather, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the motion is carried unanimously. Let's do one or two more motions, eh? Next motion, 5.5, appointing employer representatives to the on-campus hiring committee. This was submitted by myself, Gabe Leosis, and I'll read the motion now. Be it resolved to appoint Gabe Leosis and Marie Haddad to the on-campus coordinator hiring committee as employer representatives. Is there a mover for the motion? Corbett moves. Seconder? Matt seconds. Yeah, so this came up yesterday, but I guess this is a good forum to announce that Ashley, the on-campus coordinator for the SFSS, as of yesterday, has submitted his resignation letter and will be leaving the position in about just under a month. And so with that, we need to look forward to hiring a replacement for the out-on-campus coordinator position. This means, yay, another hiring committee. I did survey the execs, and myself, I put my name forward for this position just because I personally would really love to be on this hiring committee as one of, I think maybe one of the very few openly gay SFSS presidents in recent history, at least. And Marie has expressed interest as well as VP Equity. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to this hiring committee actually quite a lot. Any questions or comments from members of the exec? Okay, well, we'll put the question to a vote. Be it resolved to appoint Gabe Leosis and Marie Haddad to the out-on-campus coordinator hiring committee as employer representatives. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. If you would like to vote against or abstain, please raise your hand. Seeing none, without objections, the motion is carried unanimously. Okay. Next motion, appointing employer representatives to the building coordinator hiring committee. And I'll read the question now. Be it resolved to appoint Corbett Gildersleeve and John Walsh to the building coordinator hiring committee as employer representatives. Is there a mover? Corbett moves. Is there a seconder? Matt seconds. Yes, so the HR and Personnel Subcommittee has approved the job description for the new building coordinator position. We have been giving this position great thoughts as we start to begin plans for opening the student union building. The job description has been complete and was approved by the HRP, and this week on Thursday is going to a working conditions meeting with CUPE. And we will be discussing it there as well. This motion is to start getting the ball rolling on hiring staff to staff the student union building. And I'm excited for this because this is a another hiring committee, but it is one that we need to prioritize as we look to a potential opening date of August 23rd, which is again very exciting. So yeah, any questions or comments from members of the executive committee or anyone attending? Corbett.
Yeah, just that we've been working on this job description and ideas bouncing back and forth quite a while. So I'm really excited that we're actually getting to the point where we can look to hire people. And it's a big thing because they're going to be heavily involved in helping facilitate the building and student needs in the building to a certain extent. So yeah, I'm just really excited for this to happen and finally, hopefully within a relatively short time span of the hiring committee, that we get people in and get started getting trained in the building and to be able to support staff in the building as well.
Yeah.
And students and stuff, so.
Perfect, thank you, Corbett. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, seeing none, we'll put the question to a vote. Be it resolved to appoint Corbett Gildersleeve and John Walsh to the building coordinator hiring committee as employer representatives. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. If you would like to dissent or abstain, please raise your hand. Sorry, I'm tripping up on my words.
What the hell, just raise your hand.
All right, well, seeing no objections, the motion is carried unanimously. And we do have one more motion under new business, but I think now is about a good time to take let's go for a 10-minute break. So we can all return at 11:10 a.m. Okay, everyone, I will be reconvening the executive committee. It is 11:11 a.m. And we have one more motion under new business to go through. And the motion is titled SFU Climate Emergency Declaration Open Letter. And I'll read the motion now. Whereas on October 4th, 2019, the SFSS passed a motion recognizing that we are in a climate crisis and committed to reducing our collective carbon footprint on campus, stood in solidarity with students striking for the climate globally, while also requesting academic amnesty for students, and called on SFU to divest away from fossil fuels. Whereas in order to successfully mitigate climate change, change needs to extend beyond marginalized individuals and others voluntarily limiting their own consumption through their own meals, such as driving less, turning down residential heating, etc. Whereas successfully mitigating climate change must also involve behaviors that lead to systemic social change, such as improvements in loose environmental regulations of the industry that are harmful, such as to the land, water sources, and more. Economic incentives for the transition to carbon neutral sources of energy, cultural shifts away from materialism, and restriction of the political power of fossil fuel companies. Whereas SFU as an anchor institution has a responsibility to look at its direction and indirect, its direct and indirect contributions to the climate crisis, and has significant social and political influence locally and internationally. Whereas SFU has released a 2020 to 2025 sustainability plan that is woefully inadequate, as it does not encompass a climate emergency declaration, taking a stance on the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion project, promote divestment as opposed to carbon footprint reduction, ensure climate justice education mandatory for all students, ensure SFU does not receive funding from fossil fuel special interest groups, acknowledge carbon offsets as an unviable solution, demand action on Scope 3 emissions, encourage standing in solidarity with direct actions for climate justice, and recommend solutions that center climate justice while also recognizing the ongoing harm the university perpetuates. Whereas Canada declared a national climate emergency in 2019, and along with many student unions and climate justice student groups that have successfully lobbied universities and other institutions to declare a climate emergency and to divest from fossil fuels thereafter, including the University of British Columbia, University of Waterloo, and Concordia University, SFU has not. Whereas SFU declaring a climate emergency emphasizes the urgency for climate action and a proper and adequate stance to the scientifically proven climate emergency. Whereas SFU 350 is pushing SFU to declare a climate emergency with their climate emergency declaration open letter, along with concrete demands that go beyond the SFU 2020 to 2025 sustainability plan and address the systemic issues. Be it resolved that the executive committee recommends to council that it sign onto and support the climate emergency declaration open letter as attached. I think that has to be the most thorough whereas clauses I have ever seen in my life. It's awesome. Is there a mover for the motion? Serena moves. Is there a seconder?
I second.
Alma seconds. Serena, as the mover of the motion, you have the floor.
Yeah, for sure. So SFU 350 has been doing a lot of great work behind this climate emergency declaration open letter that they want to send to or use as a platform to pressure SFU to declare a climate emergency. I think the motion is pretty clear. There's a few issues with the current SFU 2025 sustainability plan. For greater clarity, Scope 3 emissions are anything that's an indirect emission. So for example, like driving to campus, the amount of gas that's burned driving up a mountain isn't really something that's necessarily included in the sustainability plan. And also, I know people may have questions about anchor institution. It just means like a large institution that's like tethered to a community and that tries to serve its members. So basically there's like a bunch of problems with the sustainability plan. SFU keeps saying that they won't declare a climate emergency. And basically this campaign is to garner support for a climate emergency declaration, whether that be pushed through like Senate, BOG, whatever. So basically SFU 350 is just looking for the exec and eventually council's support on this. And I think the motion that will go to council will also include financial support as well for programming and campaigns and that.
Thank you, Matt. Cool. Thank you, Serena, very much. Are there questions or comments on the motion from members of the executive committee? Corbett, please go ahead.
Just a quick question about the motion itself. The academic amnesty is for people, students engaging with the climate strikes?
Yeah, so
Okay.
basically students who went through the climate strikes and maybe missed class and like missed participation or assignments and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Others? Okay. Well, I guess I'll speak in favor of this motion. I really very much agree that SFU's actions and stances on the climate crisis are, as the motion says, woefully inadequate. I don't think SFU can actually claim that they are taking action on climate change or the climate crisis without, taking active opposition to projects like TMX, the tank farm, without actually declaring a climate emergency, without actually looking into divesting from fossil fuels. I mean, these are pretty basic and tangible actions that the university can take in dealing with the climate crisis, but they are stances that they continue to resist. Honestly, in my opinion, because they probably think it's too political. And unfortunately, a lot of these issues that deal with issues that impact marginalized communities or even like, I think that we all understand that climate change is real and that is happening and that it will have real tangible impact on all of our lives, particularly for marginalized communities. Unfortunately, that often gets politicized in terms of these harmful projects that are going through, like TMX, the tank farm. Even divesting from fossil fuels has now become political when really it should not. And so I think that these are all ways in which the university is just kind of honestly avoiding accountability for its complicity in the climate crisis and the real impacts it is having and will have continuing to go forward. So, Serena, thank you for bringing forward the motion. And yeah, I'll be voting in favor. Yeah, and huge shout out to Wei Chen, the former science representative on the board of directors, and I believe SFU 350 member, and Murray, our VP Equity, who helped write the motion. So props to them. Any other discussion from members of the committee? Matt?
I have a question. Serena, do you know if any, I guess, action items like coming out besides like the open letter that will be happening after to, I guess, like organize and push on even like questioning like SFUs? They have like a 5-year sustainability plan that's supposed to be like how, I know that there's some things that we've done like with, in regards to the First Peoples Gathering House, like the projects that are ongoing, a lot of these things seem to happen behind doors, like when they talk, oh, we're talking about sustainability, oh, well, we're working on this and like things like that. I think to get some, I guess, collective action, because when we look at some of the things that they do within sustainability with like greenwashing and stuff like that, it's usually put on like the individual, like, you're supposed to do something and like they take away from like the collective action of it when we're supposed to be trying to organize to push them for accountability on some of the things that they want to do, and when we're pushing towards, divestment and even like the stance on like the TMX pipeline. There's things that we can do, like even getting like reports, tangible reports that they're supposed to be doing, like the university on their part, so that we know like what is happening with their 5-year sustainability plan. Like in regards to like what I was saying with the First Peoples Gathering House, like nobody knew what was happening like from the university side on this project, but after hopefully this open letter can push them to say like, well, we want some stuff for accountability and transparency about like, what are some things that you can put in writing? Like now we get monthly reports every month on like what they're doing and stuff that people are working on. And then, so I think that might be helpful, like, because then you can see exactly like what they're doing, because they can say they're working on some of these things or saying that they're doing a lot of their like planning for sustainability within the university, but then you don't really know, right? So I think that might be helpful, but I'm also like in favor of this. And I think the, calls to action that they're bringing forward, like they don't seem like they're things that can be done, so.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think in terms of next steps, I know I submitted the motion to council this morning. It includes be it for the resolve clause that will delegate like this action and this kind of like campaign to the Equity and Sustainability Committee. And I know Marie and I have like a couple of meetings set up with Rita, who's the manager of, I think, like campus sustainability at the sustainability office, to push them on like their SFU 5-year sustainability plan. And like you mentioned, like they say it's a living document, but whenever we point something out, they're really reluctant to change anything. So it's definitely something that we can pressure them on in the future. And I think it's a great idea to like make mention of like the changes that have been made with like the First Peoples Gathering House and be like, this is an example of like what you should be doing. Like, and this labor shouldn't come from like Indigenous students or like people having to push back. Like if you say that it's a living plan, like you should do it from the start instead of like going back and readapting this plan. I know like personally I've read it and it includes a lot of problems. They included DNA without our permission, which is like a huge problem as well. Honestly, I could speak about it for a while, but I won't. But yeah, thank you, Matt. I think Marie and I will definitely like continue to pressure this for a while, and with the help of like SFU 350, and hopefully with their seat on sustainability and equity committee, that will help as well.
Thank you, Serena. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, seeing no more discussion, I just want to say again, thank you to the folks who worked on this motion, Serena, Marie, Wei-Chen. I'm looking forward to this going to council, and hopefully council also votes in favor of signing on to the letter. So let's put the question to a vote. Be it resolved that the SFSS Executive Committee recommends to Council that it signs onto and supports the Climate Emergency Declaration open letter as attached. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. Please raise your hand if you would like to vote against or abstain. Seeing none, that motion is carried unanimously. And that, I believe, is the last motion under new business, if I'm not mistaken. So we can move into our discussion items. And the first discussion item on the agenda today is Metro Vancouver Alliance. And I believe, Matt, was this you?
Yes.
Cool, you have the floor.
Yes, is everyone able to hear me okay? Even on the thing? All right, cool. And if you can't hear me or something happens, please just cut in and let me know, or Gabe will let me know. So last Tuesday on the 15th, I met with Liam from Metro Vancouver Alliance. And we had a pretty decent like discussion. Like they've been doing outreach and wanting to meet with someone from the SFSS, a representative from the SFSS. And so I've been working, you know, kind of doing like those introductory emails and meeting with folks. And we had a pretty good, you know, discussion on like what Metro Vancouver Alliance is. And I did ask Liam to send me some documents that I can forward to folks like after if you want to look at as well. And I'm not sure. So what I can let you know right now is that Metro Vancouver Alliance, is an alliance of 25 organizations across Vancouver. As like a collective to push on social justice issues such as like mental health, housing. They also, like their organizations include healthcare unions, housing associations, multi-faith spaces and environmental groups. And so, you know, there were some things that they were discussing like about where they've seen some of the work that we've done, apparently, and they wanted to reach out to see if the SFSS would want to sign on to this alliance. And I've been pretty thorough. Like one thing, that's why I'm bringing it here, because I want to know what other folks know about Metro Vancouver Alliance, as well as thoughts. Because one thing that I was thinking about, because I did ask them, I wanted to see if like, obviously like there's alignment. And also one thing, if part of my portfolio when making relationships or building, working relationships or alliances with other groups, I want to make sure that they have, they're not problematic, like there's no problematic things that have happened, or like they don't have any stances that like we don't agree with, whether in our issues, policies and things like that. So I made recommendations telling him that, to go look at our issues, policies. And I also was like, well, you probably have a board or something. And he was like, yeah. I said, okay, well, can you send me your mandate? Can you send me like examples of work that you've done in the past year for like equity seeking groups, and also like how does this prioritize students? Because I think it would be good if everything sounds the way that he's saying, like it sounds pretty okay. To join alliances like this, I think would be really helpful in terms of like pushing for student affordability, student housing, student mental health in the Metro Vancouver area. Because for example, let's say, we want to push back on we want to get students or like international students a subsidy, and we run a campaign saying like, oh, we want to get these students a subsidy because there's no affordable housing for students, and we have Metro Vancouver Alliance. Well, they already have 25 organizations in Metro Vancouver, and that's less outreach that we have to do because we would be in alliance. And so if we sent out a letter, we would already have 25 organizations that would collectively sign off on our letter. But then that's another thing too that I think about being critical, is that some of these groups need to look into who they're also aligned with as well, because we don't want to be signed on to something that might be problematic, or they're, marginalizing folks like in these spaces as well. So that's something that I've been thinking about, and I definitely want to do more research. And I don't know too much about Metro Vancouver Alliance. A lot of these things like with unions outside of SFSS, like in Vancouver area, especially stuff that's happening like, with like migrant workers and all these issues that like, those are still really new to me, and I'm learning. So I'm trying to do my best to like do research and ask really tough questions, because I was very blunt about it. I was like, well, I want to see like your stance and what you've done, and I need to see these things before I can even discuss any further with you, and I'll be bringing it to exec. And then I said, best case scenario, how this would work, I bring here, we'd have a discussion, and I'd get him to come present here, and then it would have to go to council to like formalize like an MOU or something like that, like formalize that alliance with MVA. So just things like that, those are things that I think is very preliminary, but I thought it might be something good to have on the table for student affordability and things that we're pushing for outside of SFSS, because right now I don't think we have much relationships with that. I think it could be beneficial, but I also want to know folks' thoughts on that as well. I was wondering if, I'll probably message Aisha, but yeah, there's things like that as well. So I don't know.
Just thanks for bringing that as up as a group. Yeah, we also kind of need to, sorry, my comment's not directly related, but it's more about alliance building and stuff, is also double checking with BCFS and ABCS and other groups to see what this year's plan for them are, what they're planning to run on, if there's things that we can support, campaigns we support or not, around student issues directly. But yeah, I think this is good to us to be broader than just student societies. Like it's important, those groups are important too for pushing for big student stuff as well, but having multifaceted groups can also be very handy.
Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
There's also things too that I thought would be really helpful. Like they also, one thing there is like a monetary aspect, but it could be really low. Like I said, $1,000. Kind of like the same thing with the International Student Advocacy Office. Like we pay what they were asking for, we pay X amount for like that, but what they're asking for is pretty small, but it would give access to our exec and our council, because they host workshops in community for things on all types of things that usually folks I think would have to pay for or something. So if they have workshops or things in the fall, they could come in and do workshops. I think that would also be good. And then there's also volunteer opportunities, something I was thinking about. Like they have a lot of volunteer opportunities to build connections outside in different areas, like housing related, especially in coalitions. They do a lot of coalition work. So like having students go out and do cold calling for campaigns, or going out and doing tabling, or going to some of these events and helping organize, like with some of these places that have been doing this for a while. I think it's really good experience for like undergraduates and on council, and there might be something really relevant that could come out of it, or it could help folks like find, like it could help with their degree or things that they want to do, and kind of broaden their experiences being in like the hub of like the SFSS and like SFU to really expand, because a lot of the experience that I've gotten has been from volunteering on the downtown east side, and also, kind of stepping out of those comfort zones and being in those places and working with different groups of people, working with people in different ages, different experiences and things like that, and learning how to move around in the world in that way, I guess. So yeah.
Cool, thank you, Matt. So have you, seeing as this is kind of still preliminary, have you actually met with Liam yet, or has it kind of just been an email back and forth?
No, like we met last week.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and we talked for like an hour, so, and if you want to just let him know, I'm going through like my annual plan saying, this is what like I'm kind of focusing on that might be relevant to like what you're talking about, or what's relevant here, like is there anything that you see that we align on? And then I got Liam to send me some documents that they've had, and I can forward that to exec.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, I would personally love to read that stuff. And I think it would be really cool if we could organize like they could come in and we could do a presentation to the executive committee, and we can learn more about them and see if our mandates align, and what we can do. When you say monetary aspect, is that kind of like a same thing with the International Student Advocacy Office, where we just did like a one-time contribution, monetary contribution?
I thought the International Student Advocacy Office, I think it's annually. But
Is it? Okay.
I think this would also be annually, but he said some places, like, it's a contribution because they're trying to also kind of in the same position, hire a staff to do that, and so they're getting all these organizations to contribute.
Yeah.
But he was saying around $1,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So to like be a part of like, to help out or like something like that. But I can ask more about that as well.
Cool. Yeah, any other questions or comments? Okay. So I guess action items, see if they're available for an exec meeting, maybe the next one. And Matt, you can send us those documents.
Yeah, I'll forward them.
Read over. Cool. Okay. Thanks, Matt. Nextly, we have discussion item 6.2, hiring committee updates. I just thought this would be a good opportunity for all of us to give a bit of a roundtable update on where all of our the hiring committees that we are at, kind of at what stage you're in. You don't need to, obviously if you can't share information yet if you're still in interviews, but I'd love to hear like what stages all of these hiring committees are at, whether you're just starting or you're in the interview stage, or you might have a candidate shortlisted sometime soon. I'd love to hear about that. Well, I guess we're all on various hiring committees, so we can do a bit of a round table, but personally myself, Corbin and I are were at this point on the Policy Research and Community Affairs Coordinator Hiring Committee. And we had our last interview yesterday and had our last meeting in the it was the same session, but we came out with a preferred candidate, and I'm happy to announce here that it was our final candidate was Beatty, who currently serves as the research assistant with the SFSS, and she was the successful candidate and will in 2 weeks be starting as the policy research fully fledged policy research and community affairs coordinator, which is really exciting. I'm looking forward to working with her in that capacity. And now, that was the only hiring committee I was on, but now of course I'm on the out on campus hiring committee, which will likely be starting very, very soon. Matt, how about you?
So for the campaigns, the Candidacy Coordinator, pretty much me and Marie just finalized the interview questions, and pretty much we have our shortlist candidates. It's just up to me to schedule and set up those interviews to get them done, and get them scheduled. So just sending out availability still for myself, Marie, Dipti, and Nancy. Last week was pretty busy for me because I wasn't actually here and I wasn't working from like my normal workspace, so it was kind of hard to schedule things, and it's also midterms. So I think this week just sending out that information, but we do have shortlist candidates, just contact them, following up and setting up the interviews, and then we should be good to go on that because I want to get it done like within the next couple weeks.
Cool, thanks Matt. Sounds good. Corbett, I guess same update for you because we were both on policy research and now you're on building coordinator. Is that all?
I'll contact John, and we need to, who would be sending the stuff to the request for the union to have their members for the hiring committee? Is that done by you? Is that done by John?
It would be done by me.
Okay.
But I do believe we already have names.
We do? Okay.
Yeah, I need to double check that. I remember seeing it somewhere, but if not, I will contact and get those names.
Okay, well, I'll send out an email to the hiring committee email list once it gets created to get that going.
Cool. Jess, how about you?
We finalized the candidate who accepted the position for the communications coordinator, and now we're looking to onboard them starting around July 5th. I'm still looking through applications on my end for the Women's Center assistant. And then Athena has kindly made a spreadsheet on how to allocate the information, and then we need to finalize the candidates as well. It's also now closed, so we're just looking at the resumes while I am, and then providing feedback to provide our short list. And I think that's it. And then ACOM, I know if you're still here, you're also on one of the hiring committees. If you're able to give an update on your end, that would be great too.
Hi, yes, I don't have much of an update on my end from the hiring committee. If I'm honest, I'm still a little bit confused as to what's happening. Aisha did give me a link to set up with Collage, so we are getting, I believe, a lot of applications for it. I don't know exactly what the next stage is. It'll be my first hiring committee, but I am excited for us to move forward with it for sure. I'm sorry if that wasn't much of an update.
No, it's okay. I think that you're on the admin assistant hiring committee, right? ACOM?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't think that one has gotten booted up yet, but I think it will be soon. So you'll probably hear from like Aisha. Well, you said you have, so that's cool. Matt, you have a direct response?
Yeah, ACOM, do you have the hiring handbook?
Oh no, I can send that to her.
Pardon?
You don't have the hiring handbook? You haven't seen it yet?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I guess Jess can forward that. Do you need it?
Yes.
Everybody needs it? Lori?
Yeah.
Who needs the hiring handbook?
Just send it to the exact mailing list and the AVP mailing list.
Yes.
So everyone has it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, cool. And Serena.
Just to add on to ACOM's update, the admin assistant, I think posting will be live until the 30th. For the out on campus programming assistant, the deadline to apply was extended because we were kind of looking for more folks with lived experience. So that deadline ended last night at midnight. So Marie sent out a when to meet this morning, I believe, so we can go over the applications and that kind of thing. I think next week is when the when to meet was set up for.
Cool. Sounds good. Okay, well, thank you everyone for the updates. And we're making progress. We're making progress on all the hiring committees. This is a pretty big year for hiring, and I'm honestly looking forward to seeing what the SFSS looks like by the end of this elected term. So, Corbett, do you have a
just quick comment? And it feels like we're getting them to be done more efficiently now. Like last year, it took us a long time to just get the operations and organizer positions on because of everything else on our plate at the time. But it seems like, yeah, there's a lot of hiring committees, but we're starting to get more efficient at them, it feels.
Yeah.
Which is a good sign.
Yeah, no, for real, we're getting better at it. Okay, cool. If there's no more discussion on hiring committees, we'll move on to item 6.3, which was MSc Annual Report Template Guide for Feedback. But I think there's no updates on this one yet, are there?
Oh, yeah, we can look at it.
Oh, okay.
We can just get like an overview of what's happened in the meantime.
Okay, sure.
And yeah, and if any questions come up, that's good. So yeah, so just kind of give an overview of the history. So far, this was initially brought up by me and Jess about at exec a couple meetings ago, pitching the idea that as in combination of the committee's role as more administrative oversight, and operational oversight, that we should start getting some kind of annual reports coming in from all of our different departments. As well as these annual reports can also help us as part of crafting the annual report for our annual general meetings in the fall every year. And we thought first step would be to seek out a report from our member services center, member services coordinators, because one, they're collectively the very large department, they're very forward facing, and they would have probably been one of the most impacted departments with the pandemic last year, and the change to remote services and remote work and such. But ideally, we'll want to, over the summer, have a report from all our departments, just, for instance, finance, accounting right next, they're in the middle of the audits. Communications, when we have a new communications coordinator come in, we can have them lead like a review with the staff there, that kind of stuff. And so me and Jess initially brainstormed some ideas on what we'd like to see from reporting for like questions like everything from how did the pandemic affect you last year, your operations services, what kind of feedback were you getting from students, or questions or current comments from students around the same kind of things, service delivery, support, all that remote, how the changeover to remote impacted you, challenges you had, opportunities, benefits, all those kinds of things. We then took this report to Aisha to get her feedback, and she gave us some, because me and Jess were learning about things like, okay, there's a section about how was it working with execs, but then realized maybe that's a working conditions thing, that should be more anonymous through the union and stuff. So we'll probably take that out and have that as a separate request. And then we also were thinking about, the equity side of our services, like from an equity lens. And we wanted to ask the question, we realized maybe we need some training, or we need to have much more broader consultation with a lot of our different constituency groups around equity, how they view equity, how equitable our services and our supports are. So the report that we got drafted has a number of comments and notes, and then we still need to redraft some of this and put it more cleanly. And we also want to go to our staff as well at that time that would be receiving the report to have consultation so they understand where we're coming from, the questions we're asking and stuff, because it may look totally fine for me on paper, but that doesn't mean it gets translated properly, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where we're at with it. Yeah, go ahead, Jess.
Just go ahead.
Ayesha suggested to have an equity auditor, which I strongly suggest that we do, just so that we could have an equity review of our services and how that works as well. Other things that we'll be talking about are student life. So for example, what have you noticed with students and their willingness to come remote events? What types of events were mostly hosted, etc. I also put the link in the chat for you to view. It's a very rough draft. We're meeting with Ayesha again later today to finalize these things. Again, we just want to make sure that the questions we ask are appropriate, whether they be go through QP or they are moved for another section, like another report. We also have department focused questions about what were the challenges, if any, were there technological processes that were difficult, what improvements you'd like to see. There's also staff-student relationship feedback as well in terms of funding and services and support. We hopefully want to present this, Corbett and I, to the staff, again, like he said, for consultation, and we want to give an adequate amount of time for them to formalize this with data analysis as well, short summaries and stuff like that. Hopefully they have an allocated time for around a month.
Yeah,
so
4 to 6 weeks. I think.
Around 6 weeks, so that we can present it to the annual general meeting happening in November, October?
Probably late October, yeah.
Late October, and present that to everyone.
Cool. Thank you, Jess. Do you want to add something? You look like you were waiting.
No, my assumption is the reason why Nancy and Melanie are here was related to this discussion topic, but maybe they're just generally curious about what's going on in exec. So if they want to speak.
Yeah. Are there any other questions or comments from folks present in the meeting today?
Yeah, actually, we were told that the topic of supporting in-person events for student groups would be discussed at the meeting today.
Okay, cool.
That's what I figured, yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's the last discussion item, which kind of sucks. Okay. Sorry that you guys have to stay for the whole thing. Well, anyway, thank you, Corbett and Jess, for the overview of that. I guess this will be a topic of discussion that will come up more.
Yeah, once we have this more finalized, once we've finish our additional consultations with Ayesha and with the member services coordinators, we'll have it more finalized and we'll submit that to here for approval, and that will go out then to staff to work on with the updated timeline.
Perfect. Okay, sounds good. Wonderful. Thank you both. We'll move to item 6.4 out of our discussion items, which is titled SFSS Members Meeting, in brackets Annual General Meeting 2021. And Corbett, you submitted this item.
Sorry, I completely forgot about that. So generally just to give the exec head up that we now have a full membership for the committee. And so I'll start sending out meeting times for the group to engage with, and I'll develop a plan to bring back to exec. So you have an idea of what needs to be done, who needs to get done, who's responsible for that, and timelines, as well as a recommendation on when we should host our meetings, and in what format. So just want to give you a heads up that will be starting hopefully soon.
Cool.
The whole process.
Awesome. Yeah, I think this is a really good time to start thinking about what we actually want to put on the agenda of the AGM, and how we want to hold it. I think that even though we are going to be in person, the online format really worked well. I mean, we had 600 students come to it. I think it makes it more accessible. I actually think that in-person AGMs, it's really it creates a lot of barriers for students to actually attend and participate. It's a really ableist assumption that students can come to a 3-hour annual general meeting and sit there in an auditorium for that whole amount of time. As well, it's just most students don't have 3 hours of their day to spare to go attend an AGM. So I think that, if students can log on online, have a cup of coffee beside them, they can do their homework while also participating in the AGM. It really does make it a lot more accessible and and easier for members to participate. Sorry, you went like, when I said topics for the AGM. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, thank you. I'll probably, this will be a follow-up question with the report, but with my plan, but things like for instance, I know we probably we should retry all 4 of the bylaw referendum questions. Questions, do we want to do it at AGM or do we want to do it as a fall referendum separate?
Yeah.
Again, the reason why they unfortunately, they all had a very high yes, but they were past the yes vote threshold for a special resolution of 2/3. But they didn't have enough votes in total to be quorum.
Yeah.
So we should be trying again. And just a reminder, those 4 items where there was 2 that relate to bylaw cleanup, like renumbering and fixing some typos and such. One related to a budget cap on administrative wage costs, like in total as well as specific. And to prevent what happened the last couple of years where we had the mid-side just blew up quite big, like became unsustainable. As well as a bylaw to kind of enshrine divestment, of fossil fuel divestment in the bylaws. Like we have in policy, but the idea was to go beyond that.
Yeah.
So the question I'll probably bring back is, how do we want to do it? Do we want to do it as a fall referendum or a spring referendum again, or do we want to do it as part of the AGM?
Mm-hmm.
Is there other items that we'd like to put on the AGM agenda for votes because ideally, it's one thing to say 300 plus students need to show up. We have to give them a reason to show up beyond just looking at the annual report and the finance report and the audit, right? That I've seen in past years with boards that did try, they had nothing of value, so to speak, on the new business side of things. 20 people show up, right?
Yeah.
And some groups were fine with it because our rules allow for certain things to be handled with 20 people only. That's not transparent. It's not really accountable. It's not good governance. It's not healthy for us to develop a governance or a policy, like a political engagement aspect for our student bodies. We don't give them a reason to engage with us, right?
Yeah.
We also have a part in our annual plans and strategic plans of having regular fall and spring referendums and AGM votes to have on. So one thing I'll probably bring to council as well is, executive council is, what do we want to put on the agenda? It heads up, if there's anything big, anything small, any number of stuff from opinion requests to, another tuition condemnation or something with maybe additional stuff on it. So that's just the heads up of to start thinking.
Yeah.
If you already haven't been.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Corbett, for bringing this up. Personally, I think it would be cool to try those bylaw amendments for the AGM. It makes sense, I think, instead of doing a referendum, because it gives people an incentive to want to come to the AGM. I was thinking about this, around doing another tuition condemnation vote, because this time not only, also I saw your hand up a long time ago, and I forgot to call on you again. Did you want to go ahead before I go any further?
I was just gonna move to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. We only got 5 minutes, right?
Yeah. Do you think 15 minutes will be enough? Maybe 30 minutes?
Yeah, we also have a meeting at 12.
Yeah.
Or the sub-building working group has a meeting at 12.
Do we what?
Yeah.
No.
It's not on my calendar.
It's on mine.
What?
Maybe, are you part of it?
Maybe just.
No, not the sub-opening working group, just the building working group.
Oh, I'm not on that.
Okay, I'm not on that, so I'll have to leave at 12.
Okay. Well, anyway, you moved to extend by 15 minutes?
Yeah, 15 minutes.
Okay. Somebody want to second that? Jess, any discussion on extending the meeting?
Does anyone have to leave at 12? Other than
We
me?
just need to finish at 12:15 because I have class.
Okay.
Please.
Just making sure that we don't have quorum issues.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, seeing no discussion, we'll put the question to a vote on extending the meeting by 15 minutes. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent? And the motion is carried. Okay, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, we can look at doing a tuition condemnation vote again, because I think we built up momentum from last year's tuition condemnation vote, and it's something that we can even just students could expect from us to be able to do these types of motions. Okay. But yes, I think it's good to bring this up, and it's something that we can think about over the next couple of weeks as the members meeting planning committee gets up and running. Okay.
I have a question. Sorry.
You have a question?
When this will be starting? The members meeting will be.
Corbett?
I would like to send out the when to meet after, later today, and probably ideally within the next 2 weeks get the sit down, and
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna do like an introduction online, like an email first, and then, get it up and running so that we're not, in case there's any, especially with mission statement and stuff, it's gonna be harder to schedule. For
Yeah, and then
weeks.
coordinating with the annual report and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's my job there as VP internal to oversee that anyways, but
Yeah.
so it's not necessarily, I don't think it's directly related to the MFPC, but I'm gonna use everything I can to get it done.
Cool. Anything else on this item? No. Okay, cool. Next item is Burnaby City Council by-election student engagement.
Head out.
You're gonna head out?
Yeah, because I have to go up to my office.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thanks for it. I brought this discussion item forward because we have there's a Burnaby City Council by-election coming up. There are 2 vacant seats on City Council that are currently going up for election, I believe on June 26th, if I'm not mistaken. And here are the key considerations for us. A large chunk of our members live in Burnaby and are SFU students. And Burnaby City Council is really pivotal when it comes to many issues that are directly relevant to stances we have taken in the past. Gondola, TMX, tank farm, affordable housing, transit, all of these things. Burnaby City Council is really pivotal in making decisions around those issues. But, here's the problem. Students are a large voting bloc, they just don't vote. So it's critical that when these elections happen, that we try our hardest to get students engaged and let them know that, this is something that you can vote in. Specifically, it's often that students who live on residence don't know that they can actually vote in municipal elections. For example, I live on residence right now. I typically live in Maple Ridge. I just actually learned that I can vote in the city council election for Burnaby because I've lived in Burnaby for at least 30 days. So that means anyone living on residence now can actually vote. So, we are thinking, mainly me, Matt, and Ella have been working on this a lot around thinking about ideas on how to increase student engagement. Ella, I don't know if you want to touch on this a bit at all.
Yeah, so currently in the process, we have a bit of a communications campaign going out in order to get more folks engaged and to reach out to the broader audience that we have over our social medias. In order to just get them aware, because I think that you're correct, Gabe. It's folks mostly not being aware of the fact that they can go and vote and the fact that the eligibility requirements are so much less than what we think they are. Once the 30-day residence in Burnaby, can folks hear me? And see me?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, cool, thumbs up. Thank you. So essentially, currently we have a communications plan going underway. We also will be organizing some tabling to happen outside of residence, and I think the dining hall as well, just to get folks that are actually on campus currently aware of the fact that on this coming Saturday, they'll be able to go to the voting center, the voting location that will actually be on campus, which again, a lot of folks don't know about, to get folks aware in that point, but we are currently organizing multiple avenues of getting student engagement, getting students engaged in this particular by-election, because as you noted, Gabe, it's extremely important. There's a lot riding in the campaigning that we do on this election, so.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for going into that. And yeah, I think that even just like simple things like, I know we're working on putting up some graphics, we'll do some tabling outside of residence. Maybe we can even send an email to our membership. Like, I think even just the awareness, generating awareness is just so simple and an effective method of getting students up to vote. Because like, if I'll be honest, if I wasn't on the SFSS and I knew this was happening, I probably wouldn't have known there was a by-election. And by-election, typically, voting rates in municipal elections are low. Add a by-election onto that, and it's even lower. But the stakes in this by-election are just as big as if it were, you know, a general election. So, yeah, that's that. Does anyone have any questions around kind of what we can do as the SFSS in generating voting awareness for the by-election? Matt?
I think like what we discussed like last week too is actually having like really, what I find for like students at least who want to like, when you're trying to get engagement, is being really specific of like what they're supposed to do and giving them like A, B, C, D. So like, you know, you go vote before this date, here's the polling, like here's where the poll is, like this is where you can go vote. This is what you need to bring to vote, and here's the address, like things like that. And I think we'll be adding that to like some of like the digital things that are going out online, and like even just stuff like that, for students to have access to even know how to vote or like how to do that. So I think that'll be helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Any other questions? So yeah, this is something we'll be working on very intently for the next couple of days, and continue to give updates on. I won't live in Burnaby forever. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We have one more discussion item, and I feel bad that this is the last, and we don't have a lot of time to talk about it. So this may be a to be continued, but let's at least begin the discussion around COVID-19 safety, student unions, and clubs. So to preface this discussion, it's important to note that public health orders from the province are starting to become more relaxed in terms of outdoor gatherings of up to 50 people are now allowed. Indoor gatherings as well, I believe, structured indoor gatherings of up to 50 people are allowed. People are beginning to mingle again, expand their social bubbles. And because of these health orders, student unions and clubs have now been asking what our policies around in-person events and meetings are. And of course, right now, as it stands, our standing stance is that the same as that from the beginning of COVID, is that no in-person events. At least that's the standing stance right now. And that everything be virtual. And so I guess the question on the table is, what should we revisit this stance? And if so, how and what would this look like? There are kind of a lot of questions here to ask in terms of, you know, if we are to, you know, green light some in-person events, what would that look like? Would we only, you know, condone outdoor off-campus events, outdoor on-campus events, or like indoor events? Like what, there are a lot of questions here that, there's a lot of nuances here that we kind of need to explore and figure out. So I do want to open up the floor for discussion on this. And I am honestly kind of going into this with absolutely no idea how this could work. So I'm very interested in hearing everyone's thoughts. And Nancy has the direct response. So Nancy, you have the floor.
I think thank you. In order to speed it up a bit and to sort of answer the clubs and DSUs, we follow the health orders, but if we're not going to have the things on campus yet or in the sub or whatever, that we allow the venues, you know, that are off campus, but anybody applying for grant funding must provide the plan that they're holding the event in, the venue. They need a plan in place apparently by the health board, and that must be supplied to the club or DSU, whichever group is holding the event, and that's submitted to us in order for the grant to be, looked at, to be reviewed. That would make it easier. Also, making sure that they keep a list of attendees if it's in person. That will sort of speed it along, make the members quite happy that we are going to do it, but we are going to have to watch the finances because it can get a little bit, I guess, out of hand because now it'll be off campus.
Yeah. Matt?
I think it would be also good to kind of like what we do for all kind of, I'm thinking about it to make it like in a logistical way, how we can like also track this as well and make it so it's not really hard on like our staff as well. I think making like a checklist of things that they go through, like these are things that you need to have for events. So you need hand sanitizer, you need to be social distancing, people need to be masked and saying like, and they'll have different requirements. Is this an indoor event? If it's an indoor event, this is all the things that you need. If it's an outdoor event, this is what you'll need. A minimum, I think you can just say like a minimum or no, you can have a maximum that is directed by BC's like COVID guidelines. And then saying like, if it's at a venue, it needs to list like the event, venue, and then have all of the logistics like in place, like what type of an event is it like, and I think making things like no sharing food, like, just stuff like that on our end, just saying like that, no food, like if people bring their own food and stuff like that, but won't be serving food. Cause I know we have like different clubs and stuff doing all kinds of different things within their own bubbles that might be off campus. And I think just having like a detailed like itinerary saying like, if you have this event, you need to have people sign up where they have their information says you can contact trace them. And these are things that like, those club execs or like ESUs will need to prioritize and think about it in that way. And for them to have that event, they'll have to go through that whole list and then it'll have to be approved by the staff for them to go forward with it to access funding. I think that'll probably be the best way. So I guess helping on our end, I guess going with the provincial guidelines, kind of taking notes from what we've had, like even, for the stuff when we're having in-person meetings, things like that, and just making it a checklist that this can be very general, that can be sent out to all clubs and like DSUs, that if you're gonna be having, like we can allow you to have events, but you have to have all of these things or else you can't have your event if you're accessing funding or stuff like that. I think that would be really helpful, but just developing what that looks like and when we can do that by and what's realistic for us. So those are my thoughts on it.
Cool, thank you, Matt. I gotta pick on you, Jess, because you read the events. Do you have anything to say?
Thanks for bringing that up, Matt. That's something to consider. I'm also going to be working with some staff with sub-working groups for room bookings and events as well, and just figuring out the logistics because it always has to fall under the PHO guidelines and making sure that staff get priority with safety and their comfortability as well before we let more and more students into this building, I think is a priority for me too. But following logistics for what indoor events can we have, what outdoor events can we have as well. I'm just curious though if staff, I know we pushed this to the last discussion item, I'm really sorry, but I would like to hear from you on any just initial thoughts, and we can always discuss this further within our sub-working groups. I guess, next thing, like, an action item, I guess, would me putting a motion, hopefully within the next few meetings with the exec to allow 4 in-person meetings, I would suggest. Sorry, not meetings, events, like once it's okay.
Yeah.
Because I know the last meeting that we had, it was, well, in March 2020, I think the execs passed a motion to not carry any in-person events anymore. And I think that's like, the question is, well, when are we going to pass a motion that says, yes, we will allow in-person events? So that's something to look forward to within the next few weeks, I hope.
Yeah, and I think I see Nancy direct response, but first, I think, hold on, what you said for a minute, I think there's kind of two discussions that we need to have. First of all, like what in-person events will look like before the sub opens. Because between now and August 23rd, the tentative sub opening date, obviously students can't use the building. We won't have any room bookings yet. So what are we telling them in terms of how can they have off-campus, in-person, outdoor, indoor events? And then the sub-working group, like all those subgroups that you were talking about, we'll look at how that will look in the building. So I just kind of wanted to make that distinction, but Nancy, I see you're on the speakers list.
I'll be quick. Thanks. You covered most of it, Gabe. Is that we have some groups right now who want to go hiking as a group. You know, there's certain little things. So are we still telling them you can go and do it, but the Student Society doesn't want anything to do with it? Like, they are the ones that want to know.
Yeah, exactly. So this doesn't quite fall under the sub working group because it's not really related to the student union building. It's just like in the interim between now and when the student union building opens, what can student groups do off campus? So with a decision like this, it can come to the executive committee. I do, however, think that we should bring this to council because it is a pretty substantial decision for just the 7 of us to make. But Matt, I really love what you were saying around like a checklist or like a toolkit kind of on what you would need to do an event, say if it was indoors or if it was outdoors. And yeah, everything you said. I think that it's because we're tight on time. Maybe we can even take this offline, have a brief like 1 hour meeting with maybe myself and Jess and Nancy and any of the MSCs, and we can create some guidelines on what this could potentially look like and put that forward to council at a future meeting. How does that sound, Nancy and Melanie?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Yeah, I do like the idea of the checklist. Yeah, just to keep things simple.
Perfect. Love it. Not going to take my job. Okay, cool. Well, this is kind of exciting that we're actually having these conversations, isn't it? Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I just have one more thing. I think just on our end too, like what we might be able to provide too, like just on our end, like, you know, there's stuff that like we don't want them to be spending the funding on buying masks and buying hand sanitizer. Like those are things that like we can provide, and also just thinking like preliminary, like how will they pick that up then? Because we do have donated masks, we have hand sanitizer, and maybe we have like boxes for events that like come out like you can pick up at if you are the one hosting the event, or like you know, a club exec or a DSU exec that you schedule a time to pick it up from someone, and it's gonna have all the stuff that you need from our end to go have your event. You know, just thinking about things like that so they're not wasting their funding on getting those things, and those be ready, and then whatever is left over, like they just drop it off, whatever is not used, you know what I mean? And then they have to just have those, and we have them already set up.
Yeah.
Oh,
Something to think about.
Athena says, I have 10 boxes of pads if you want to distribute that too. I think that'd be great. Like put it in within the masks and stuff, because we never know what happens when they're doing their external events. Individually boxed. Nice.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks, Matt.
Event kits.
Yes. Love that. Okay. Well, action items then, we can schedule an offline 1 hour meeting to start looking into this a bit further. Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Nancy and Melanie, for sitting around for the whole meeting. We really appreciate it. And always appreciate your insight when it comes to events. Okay, cool. That is our last discussion item. So in terms of announcements, the next exec meeting will be 2 weeks from today, Tuesday, July 6th, 2021 at 10 a.m. It will also be a hybrid meeting, so You may attend virtually via Zoom or in the Student Union building as well. Just a bit of a note, if you, per the guidelines, if you are attending in person, you need to let the chair, me, know 24 hours in advance, because once again, we do have a 8-person occupancy limit in this room. And it's important that somebody has a ability to track who is actually coming, because if 9 people show up and we have an 8 occupancy limit, that is a bit of a problem. So one person is going to get turned away and would have to go do the meeting somewhere else. So that's important to know. Let's move to adjournment. Be it resolved to adjourn the meeting at 12:17 p.m. Any movers? Matt moves. Seconder? Jess seconds. All those in favor, seeking unanimous consent, please raise your hand if you would like to dissent or abstain. Okay, the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you everyone for coming.
Oh, we forgot to take a picture. Corma's not here anymore.
Oh, dang.
Wait, can whoever on the Zoom can stay so we can do